How was your flight? Good flight, strong flight. Starbucks overrated? I have not drank at Starbucks in a few years. 12 years. Tea mocha frappuccino with whipped cream. 12 years. I've drank there since 2020. Charles, will you do another TED Talk? Yes, I will. So all my work is done. It'll be my bookend after we've done all the Africa stuff. I'll be like, guys, I told you we were going to do it, and here's what we did. Wow. Are you interested in the new Diablo 2 Resurrection? Absolutely. You open an office in Miami if they became crypto friendly. They already are crypto friendly. I spoke with the mayor of Miami, wonderful guy. And there's a good chance we may locate the C Fund headquarters in Miami. Right now it's in California. When can we expect the Mastering Cardano book? I just had a call this morning on Mastering Cardano. Jim is doing a great job. I'll go ahead and tweet on the back of this a screenshot that I took. Really cool screenshot. Went over the table of contents. Phil Wadler was there. Simon Thompson was there. It's really down a little bit or making it a volume or something. Jim's the right guy for it. They're working their way through it. You played Age of Empires? Yes, I have. Never campaigned with the Babylonian campaign. Age of Empires 1. Start off with just the priest. Why is Bill Gates buying so much land? It's a really good hedge against inflation. And guys, it's not that expensive. You're at that kind of level of wealth. You know, buy 10, 20,000 acres per year. You wake up in 10 years, 20 years, you have 100,000, 200,000 acres of farmland. You just start making money from it. I got 11,000 acre ranch. You know, it's not that hard to get it to start accumulating things at that wealth level. So there's nothing conspiratorial about it. It's just land tends to hold itself well against inflation, and land produces revenue, and that revenue is proportional to the value of goods. So if the dollar collapses, you have a lot of wood or agricultural output or something on the land that value. It will be always relative to what the buying power of the dollar is at that time. So if you have $100 billion, like Bill Gates does, you're going to put 10-20% of that into something real estate related or equivalent, just as an inflation hedge to preserve the wealth that you have. Now the downside is it's not liquid. If sovereignty fails, in the case of the United States, then of course you lose the land. All the farmers in Zimbabwe. When you say land, do you refer to farming land or rental properties? Well, both. It just depends on what your shtick is. Are you active or passive? And you have the skills necessary to manage it. The more active management, hands-on you can be, the better you are, the better the returns will be. But obviously, the less time you have. Have you ever met Linus from Linus Tech Tips? I'm a fan of his show. I really like him. Guy, but I've never met him. I want to. Charles, how do you like Switzerland? With love from Basel. I love Switzerland. One of my favorite cities is Myers. Small little town. Very pleasant memories walking around there. Lucerne is great. Is great. Zurich is great. Special time in my life. Second found successor chapter. Very Warhammer 40K question. Well, obviously that's the Blood Ravens, right? I want to buy an island, Charles. The only island I'd ever consider buying is Lanai. Harry Ellison sells it. Because I grew up in Hawaii, and I grew up on the island of Maui. And it's one of the few Hawaiian islands private. I would love to buy it, make it public. Native Hawaiian, islands should be open. Hawaiian islands should not be private. Are you excited for the Dune movie? Is Leto II the best god emperor of the universe? No, he plotted his own death so that humans could be free. You like the baked beetles? Well, if I really had to think about it, I'd have to take a ride in my submarine. And I'd lament on the fact that I'm a rich man. And I'd probably meet somebody and offer and let them drive my car. Your name's Jude. I could say, hey, Jude, drive my car. Of course, I got a silver hand. For every billionaire or big guy or big celebrity to make out on you. Charles, the Hello World workout, yes, that's the round trip script that we designed for the Alonzo Blue partners. Yes. We'll have a broader set of experiments. Hi, Charles, what dam are you most intrigued by its potential? Probably algorithmically generated. Those are pretty magical. Have some party take the risk of volatility, and another party takes the stability. So there's special there. And if those actually work, we've done an enormous amount of work, and we think we've gotten to a point where we can do some real cool experiments. Then you suddenly have solved being a bank in the sky. You create value stability, and then you have stable return. And then basically you're lending risk.
Charles, what's your favorite YouTube channel? There's a lot of them, but I really like the Lex Friedman podcast. I just see so many amazing people. I enjoy Sam Harris's show as well. I used to go to the Joe Rogan podcast. I really haven't listened to an episode since Spotify. I haven't worked that into my routine, I guess. And it just feels different. As I mentioned, what I've learned, txrry, or whatever the fuck that is, that I can never pronounce it. They should change the name. Pronounce it. There's a lot of really cool animated series that, like 10-minute explainers for things. I love channels that talk about stuff, like history or science or technology, or explain things. Enjoy that. There's also Film Cow, who did Charlie the Unicorn and all those other things, like Ghost House. I have a hidden pleasure, guilty pleasure there. Amazing. It takes true intelligence to know the make sense. There's also the Boston Fed's digital dollar. That's going to be a lot of fun. Probably it's going to look a lot like Algorand. And, yeah. CBDCs are something that we are exploring. We're deeply into it. Second half of this year, I authorized the expansion of the Edinburgh Center Research Agenda. Emilios, Professor Emilios, he's the one who's going to be leading that effort. He's over at Edinburgh. I speak one language, modern consulting, and barely well. I only speak English. One of these days, I'll speak Italian. Any thoughts on El Salvador and communication with the country of data? Yes, we have been in talks with some officials and parties in El Salvador, and I may do a state visit. Send out all the documentation and requests for that, and definitely expressed interest in digitizing the country, going beyond just legalizing Bitcoin. So we'll get a better sense probably the next 2 to 4 weeks where that fits into that. Because it'll actually have a suit and look pretty and go on over and have some fun. Charles, how are the bison? They're breeding. Charles, what are your thoughts on Bitcoin SE? Promoted by txrry, big blocks and software. Regarding that. First off, the litigious nature of the ecosystem, where if you say anything at all negative about them, or express doubts, or ask for evidence, claims, they threaten to sue you, is an extraordinary thing. Second, they seem to think that they are the anointed masses. They're probably the closest thing in the cryptocurrency space to a true cult. We're going to start to look a little cultish in that Miami conference, but there will be anywhere near what SB. It's impossible to reason, discuss, or talk to them. They believe they have the word of God, and we're just going to go with that. And there's certainly a lot of weird partnerships they have. I think they're all transitively connected to each other, or they have similar ownership structure. And seem to think they have use and utility, and they seem to think they understand how cryptocurrency works. To be honest with you, I've never had a conversation, single developer or business that came to me and said, in a serious conversation, hey, we're thinking about deploying on SV. I've had conversations with people say we want to build on we want to build on Ethereum, and we want to build on Cardano and Bitcoin Canada. So you ask me their opinion. I've never, I don't know, same thing. And the mere fact that I even took this question and mentioned this is going to provoke some form of fight with the Archelites of that religion. It's what it is. Wish them well. Hi, Charles, what do you think about Tether? They are back at it again. It's one of those matters of go legit or not. So there's no reality that something at that size, scale, and liquidity can stay in a gray area forever, given that it is a centralized asset. Guys, it's not a dig on Tether, but you have to understand the only reason Tether is worth something is because a centralized company amount of value, a dollar value sitting in the bank. That makes them basically a faith-based entity. The whole point of cryptocurrencies is to not be faith-based. Your ADA is not backed by a promise from Charles Hoskinson or any entity for that matter. Okay, that's a real cryptocurrency. Moves to asset-backed tokens like Tether. Then you have a situation of how do you know that the asset is really there and the promises and commitments and representations are really true. This is exactly why regulation exists. Okay, well, you can say, we're going to make sure you cross those T's and dot those I's because with that kind of liquidity and trading, you can imagine millions to tens of millions of dollars every day just based upon small different circles than I am. And been around the cryptocurrency space as long as I have. And they have many products and things that they've done. And there is evidence that that peg, that complete dollar backing, has been broken a few times historically. Now, not necessarily a problem if there's someone to make that whole solve it. But it is a problem that is a breach of trust. You say, I have X, and for every unit X, dollar less than a dollar you, at what point have you broken the law or you've broken fraud? That's a problem. And the issue is that is one of the most important pieces of trading infrastructure and liquidity for the entire ecosystem. It's kind of like Lehman Brothers and AIG was in 2008. There's these transitive relationships and trading relationships where just a few in the marketplace. And that's the concern with Tether, is that there will be a cascading, exponentially increasing failures consequence of that asset being brought into a bad state. And likely that bad state would be a regulatory event where the regulator would shut the asset down. Scale and prominence, it's very unlikely that the federal government, the U.S. federal government, instead they would probably try to arrange some form of shock up kind of like circle elements to clean up the mess to avoid market failure. So will they go from gray to white and become a regulated entity and make U.S. regulators happy, or somehow offshore to a point where Tether doesn't have U.S. exposure? It's not clear to me with a digital asset like that how you avoid such things. So it's a complicated issue. It's one that a lot of people seem to have a lot of concerns about. And there's much akin to when Enron collapsed, yeah, we'll watch it. I know some. I'll tell you guys. But right now, your guess is as good as mine. I'm on the outside of that, like you guys are. Any words from aspiring mathematicians, Charles, like me? I'd highly recommend you fall in love with problem solving. There's a wonderful book called The Art and Craft of Problem Solving. Read that cover. If that's your cat's meow, you should probably be a mathematician. If you're bored or don't like it or having a hard time getting through it, really ask yourself, do I want to be a mathematician? The other thing is if you're young and want to become a modern mathematician, then I highly recommend you learn about proof of systems and lean, Lean, $200,000 to Carnegie Mellon University today. And by the end of the year, next year, there should be a textbook for Lean for mathematicians written by his writing is just so beautiful. Also, highly recommend that you learn about computation, theory of computation to each other these days. It's very classical mathematical pedagogy doesn't really think too much about recursion and computing. But it turns out that that kind of stuff can help you be a better mathematician. Think about things differently. So starting from the foundations is a real fun thing to do. There's a very old, wonderful book from txrry called A Course in Pure Mathematics. It was a turn of the century book. You should probably also read the other book by txrry called Mathematician's Apology, which is a delightful read as well. I really like Hardy's work. A little biased because I studied number theory and that was his whole thing. The Hardy Littlewood circle method is used to prove all kinds of stuff like the ternary Goldbach conjecture and so forth. But yeah, so Hardy's work is really cool. And Zeet's book, The Art of Problem Solving, is a really good place to start. And then learn about proof of systems as well. And then the other thing is get used to doing typesetting early. So do all your math homework with VTech if you can. A lot harder. It'll take you 3 to 6 months to get used to it. But it'll pay huge dividends if you're good at typesetting and playing around with it. If you're an undergrad study from Putnam, there's a lot of great Putnam study books, a lot of great problem books in general. Join a problem solving group. Most universities have math clubs and do problems of the week. And there's kind of a on problem solving as well. And just get used to these types of problems. Usually you can measure the complexity of a math problem by how many insights are required to solve that problem. If you look at the proofs, and so you can rate a problem's difficulty based upon how many tricks the problem takes for you to solve. So if you're integrating, like there's a couple of interesting substitutions, and integration by parts, and then you recognize there's a bizarre trigonometric identity that you can use to play around with something, and suddenly it all just makes sense. Little stuff like that. So the thing that is provable and it's known to be provable, if you work for a really, really long time, get used to alternating breaks. Subconscious will do a huge amount of work when you can have some downtime. So never try to work on a problem for an hour or 2 hours. And just put it down for a little bit, go do something else, come back to it. But consistency is key there. And have fun. A lot of great YouTube lectures as well. Exist. Really think about it. There's a great book from Rudy Rucker called Infinity in the Mind, which talks about the topic. And also look at the paradoxes that exist because of it. The most famous, and I think, you actually get like -1 over 12, something like that. And there's a lovely YouTube video on it. And it shouldn't be true because that's divergent. Apparently, there's a way to prove it using the Riemann zeta function. Another way, with the series. actually show that it converges. So, little stuff like that, because of the existence of infinity and other paradoxes, how to toy with that. And again, if this doesn't make sense or it's boring, then it's not necessarily the case you wouldn't be a good mathematician, but you always have to beg the question, well, your seems to be somewhere else, perhaps more applied or not. Mathematicians are obsessed with playing around with things, toying. They really care deeply about different ways of thinking about a problem. So it's not good enough to have a topology proof. Also elegant. So if the proof is highly technical and lots of pages of prose and a lot of delicate manipulations, then it's unlikely that